I had just finished baking my famous triple chocolate chip cookies, the scent of warmth and safety filling the air of the home I had built and paid for with 40 years of sweat and sacrifices, when the front door slammed open and my daughter-in-law, Clara, stood there, her eyes blazing with an entitlement that made my blood run cold. Before I could even ask her about the cookies which she knew I'd made for her and my son, David, she stalked across the polished hardwood floor, stopped right in front of me, raised her hand, and delivered a sharp, stinging slap right across my left cheek. The shock wasn't just physical, it was soul deep. It was the absolute, total betrayal of every boundary, every expectation of respect that had ever existed between us. And before I could even process the burning sensation on my skin, she jutted out her hand, palm up, and the words she spat out were like shards of ice. "Give me the keys now. This house belongs to us." I'm still reeling from that moment, wondering if I handled the sheer audacity of it all correctly. Was I wrong for the way I reacted to her staggering entitlement, to the point of violence? Tell me, honestly, if you would have done the same thing. To really understand how we got to the point where my daughter-in-law felt she could physically assault me and demand the keys to my paid-off home, I have to take you back, way back, to when she first entered our lives. It was 5 years ago. My son, David, is my only child, and since his father passed away, he's been my anchor. David is a kind, somewhat passive man, a brilliant engineer but socially soft, maybe a little too eager to please. When he met Clara, she was this whirlwind of energy, highly ambitious, dazzlingly beautiful, and, quite frankly, intimidating. I thought at first that her strong personality would be good for David, that she'd push him to achieve the career heights I always knew he was capable of. I really, truly wanted to like her. For the first year, I did my best. I hosted dinners, I offered to help with wedding planning, and I even funded a good portion of the wedding itself, which was far grander than I had initially budgeted for. David was just so happy, and that was all that mattered to me. I told myself that the slight, nagging feeling I had the way Clara looked down her nose at my suggestions or quickly dismissed my opinion was just the normal friction between a mother-in-law and a new daughter-in-law. It was nothing, I assured myself. It was just me being overly sensitive. The first clear sign that this wasn't just friction, but a structural fault line, emerged right after the wedding. They had bought a starter home, a lovely little place, but Clara immediately decided it was beneath their future status. She had these grand visions of their life, and apparently my modest but comfortable 3-bedroom ranch house, located in a highly desirable, established neighborhood with a massive yard, was exactly the backdrop she needed. She'd constantly drop hints. "Oh, Mom, your garden is just to die for. You have so much space here, it must be lonely for just one person." Or, "David's commute from our place is so brutal, but from here, he could practically walk to the corporate headquarters." Initially, I laughed it off, but the comments kept coming. They weren't questions. They were statements disguised as observations, laying the groundwork for a future negotiation that I had no intention of participating in. The pressure intensified dramatically when my beautiful granddaughter, Lily, was born 3 years ago. I love Lily more than words can express. She is the light of my life, and I instantly offered to help with childcare 3 days a week so Clara could continue working part-time. This offer was a mistake, or rather, the way I framed it was a mistake. I opened my home, my sanctuary, to them. They started coming over not just for the day, but often staying late, sometimes overnight. They'd bring Lily's things, and suddenly, my spare room, which I used for my craft projects, became Lily's room, filled with her toys, her crib, and their gear. And with their gear came Clara's authority. She started moving my things. I came home one day to find my cherished antique hutch, which belonged to my grandmother, moved out of the dining room and shoved unceremoniously into the garage. When I asked about it, Clara simply said, "Oh, it was cluttering the space. We need a more modern, open look for the main living areas." She didn't ask. She told me, and David just shuffled his feet, gave me a weak, apologetic smile, and said, "She means well, Mom. She just has a vision." That was the pattern. Clara dictates, David excuses, and I swallow the insult for the sake of peace and my relationship with my son and granddaughter. But then came the financial disaster that truly set the stage for the ultimate confrontation. About a year ago, David and Clara decided to upgrade their starter home to a huge McMansion-style house in a new development, completely over-leveraging themselves based on Clara's optimistic predictions for David's next promotion, which hadn't materialized. They sank every penny into the down payment and the ridiculously expensive furnishings Clara insisted on. When the promotion fell through and interest rates suddenly spiked, they were instantly underwater. They couldn't afford the mortgage, the HOA fees, and the payments on their new luxury SUV. It was a complete financial catastrophe born of hubris. That's when they came to me, not asking, but announcing. They had to sell their new, unsustainable house at a massive loss to avoid foreclosure. They needed a place to live immediately for at least a year while they restructured their finances. They suggested moving in with me. I was hesitant, very hesitant. My quiet, structured life was already stressed by the part-time use of my house. I offered them the full support they needed, but suggested I rent them a small apartment nearby, offering to cover half the cost. It was a generous offer. Clara scoffed. "Mom, we can't possibly live in an apartment. Lily needs a yard, and frankly, we need to save every penny. We'll just use the second floor here. It'll be fine." David nodded along, looking miserable. Seeing David's genuine distress and thinking of Lily, I caved. But I laid down clear, non-negotiable rules. The house is mine. My primary bedroom and all my possessions are sacrosanct. They would contribute a small amount for utilities and food. And this was strictly a 6-month arrangement maximum. That 6-month limit evaporated faster than water in the desert. They moved in all their belongings, turning my finished basement into an overflow storage unit. Clara immediately took over the kitchen, replacing my cookware with her professional grade set and criticizing my grocery choices, claiming my organic produce wasn't organic enough. I kept my mouth shut, reminding myself I was doing this for my son and granddaughter. The real breaking point came 5 months in. I had a specific wall in my living room where I kept a collection of landscape paintings done by my late husband. They weren't masterpieces, but they were priceless to me, the last tangible pieces of his artistic soul. One evening, I walked into the living room and the wall was bare. Instead, it was hung with a massive, abstract canvas Clara had picked up at some trendy gallery. My paintings were piled up next to the recycling bin, frames chipped. The resulting argument was the loudest we'd ever had. I was livid. "Clara," I said, my voice shaking, "you have absolutely no right to touch my husband's things. This is my house, and you do not make decorating decisions here." Clara stood tall, crossing her arms, and the look she gave me was utterly venomous. "Oh, your house," she sneered. "Let's be realistic, Mom. You're retired. You're living on a fixed income. David is your only heir. This house is going to be ours anyway, and when it is, we're going to sell it and buy something that reflects our modern taste. I'm just getting a head start. Think of this as an investment in your legacy. That word legacy, that thinly veiled threat and projection of ownership, woke me up. I suddenly saw the whole arrangement for what it was. Not a temporary family solution, but a strategic siege of my home, executed by a woman who saw me as an obstacle to her upward mobility. I didn't back down this time. I told her to put the paintings back immediately, or she and David would have to leave by the end of the week. David finally pulled into the fight, begged me to calm down, and told Clara to just move the pictures back. She huffed and complied, but from that moment on, a toxic silence settled over the house, thicker and colder than any tension we'd experienced before. I knew, absolutely knew, she was plotting her next move. The air was heavy, charged, like waiting for a lightning strike. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was living in a state of high alert, a stranger in my own home, being slowly pushed out by a hostile force, with my own son too weak to defend me, or perhaps too wrapped up in his wife's manufactured reality. I had fought back on the paintings, but I felt like I had won a single, minor skirmish in a war I was losing. Before I tell you what happened next, the final, shocking culmination of her ambition and my growing resolve, I want you to pause right here. Think about what I've just told you. A fully paid, off home, an entitled daughter-in-law, a passive son, and a complete loss of boundaries. Given the choice, knowing what you now know about Clara, would you have tolerated it for your son's sake? Or would you have drawn a line in the sand and ordered them out? Consequences be damned. Comment below what you would have done in my shoes before I reveal the climax. I'm genuinely interested to know if I was justified. I didn't just wait for the inevitable. After the painting incident, I realized I couldn't trust them, and I couldn't rely on David to protect me. I went straight to my long-time lawyer, Mr. Henderson, and laid out the entire miserable situation. He was appalled, but he was also brilliant. We quietly executed a few crucial legal maneuvers. First, we filed an immediate, official notice to vacate, giving them the maximum legal notice, but putting the timeline in motion, regardless of their excuses. Second, and most importantly, we finalized the transfer of my house deed into a very specific, ironclad revocable trust, with me as the sole trustee and life tenant. The trust's beneficiaries were detailed and specific. My granddaughter, Lily, would receive the house when she turned 30, ensuring Clara could never touch it. A separate, substantial cash endowment was designated for David, managed by a third party, explicitly removing Clara's direct access to any of my assets. Mr. Henderson assured me, as long as I lived, that house was legally untouchable by David or Clara. I felt a solid sense of armor settle over me. I wasn't going to be bullied out of my own home. Clara, of course, was unaware of any of this. The day of the confrontation, the one that began with the perfect smell of my triple chocolate chip cookies, was the day she received an official-looking, sealed envelope that I hadn't seen. David had been at the office, and Clara had opened it. It was the legal notice to vacate. Her face, when she burst in, was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. The cookies were still warm on the cooling rack. The kitchen was bright with morning sun, and she had violence in her eyes. The slap was hard, sudden, and absolutely deafening in the silence of the house. I stumbled back, catching myself on the kitchen island, my hand flying to my throbbing cheek. The sound of her demanding the keys, "Give me the keys now. This house belongs to us," was the culmination of all her plotting. She wasn't asking. She was executing what she believed was the final step of her takeover. But she hadn't accounted for the armor I was wearing. The shock quickly turned into a cold, protective rage. I straightened up, meeting her crazed gaze. The pain in my cheek was nothing compared to the pain of seeing her true colors. "You will never touch the keys to this house, Clara," I said, my voice low and steady. I watched her entitlement deflate slightly, surprised by my firmness. "Don't be ridiculous, old woman," she spat, taking a step closer. "You're getting evicted by your own son. We need the assets. David and I are taking possession. I've already called a realtor. You can move into a small apartment. It's better for you anyway." She actually believed the notice to vacate was for me. That's how far gone she was in her delusion. I almost laughed, despite the stinging pain. I reached into my pocket, but not for the keys. I pulled out a perfectly folded document, signed and notarized just the day before. "Here is what belongs to you," I said, handing her the document. "This is the executed instrument of the Lily Elizabeth Grant Irrevocable Trust. I signed it yesterday. Look closely." Clara snatched it, her brow furrowed in confusion, and her eyes scanned the dense legal text. As she processed the key clauses, my status as the life tenant, the house legally locked away for my granddaughter, and David's cash, only inheritance separate from the property, the blood drained from her face. You put the house in a trust," she stammered, the rage replaced by genuine, terrifying panic. "You can't do that. That's David's inheritance. It was my house, Clara." I corrected her softly, but the words were sharp. "And it will be Lily's, protected from you. The notice to vacate you opened is not for me. It's for you and David. You have exactly 30 days, as per the legal requirements, to vacate my property." As for the slap, I touched my cheek. "That was assault. I will not press charges, but I am filing an immediate restraining order that goes into effect tomorrow morning. If you come within 500 feet of this property or me after 10 a.m., you will be arrested. Call David. Tell him what you did and what you've lost." The climax wasn't the slap. It was the look on her face when she realized she hadn't just lost a house. She had lost her entire meticulously planned future, and it was entirely due to her own greedy actions. The house keys she demanded were now the keys to a cage she had built for herself. The aftermath was painful, drawn out, but ultimately necessary. David called me, heartbroken, utterly ashamed, and furious at Clara. He saw the trust, he saw the legal necessity of the eviction, and he finally, truly saw his wife for the avaricious woman she was. He apologized profusely, crying that he should have stood up to her years ago. I told him I loved him, but I couldn't be a victim in my own home. I let him know he could see me and Lily anytime, but the relationship with Clara was irreparable. They moved out not quietly, and Clara made sure to destroy a few things on her way out, which my lawyer documented. David and Clara are now separated. He's struggling, living in a small furnished rental, but he's reconnecting with himself. Clara is gone. She tried to contest the trust, of course, but Mr. Henderson shut her down. I'm back in my quiet, safe, and truly my home. I see Lily all the time, and the joy of knowing this house, my house, will someday be hers untarnished by her mother's greed, is the only true peace I've found. I have learned that the greatest love a parent can give is not always sacrifice, but the strength to protect what is theirs and to teach boundaries. The slap hurt, but the lesson it taught me was worth the pain. You must protect your sanctuary, even if the threat wears the face of family. So, was my decision harsh? Maybe. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Like this video if you were on my side and think I was right to protect my legacy for my granddaughter. Subscribe for more stories like this one that prove that real life is often stranger and more dramatic than fiction. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did Clara get what she deserved, or did I go too far? Let me know. I'll see you all in the next story.